So great. Jude is back with us now. Thanks, Jude. So we were just talking about what I suppose feels like to be an outsider and what it feels like to be excluded.
Yeah, just come back to the quote that you read from the book, that I just felt like I was clinging on to the coattails of society and managed to survive, because even whenever I was so young, I remember standing back in the playground and watching other people interact with one another. And children would be very tactile in their games and even in the language that they used, and because that didn't come naturally to me, I felt an automatic need to learn and emulate these behaviors, and in an effort to try and pass them off as my own, to try and fit in. Because I mean, as a 5 and 6 year old, or even as a teenage boy, I mean, one doesn't want to really stand out and be different. It's very proud. It's very hard to be proud of your difference, even then, because you just want to fit in and be like everyone else and not draw so much attention to yourself. So it was the most exhausting thing in the world, trying to memorize whether they're hand gestures or touch or shaking hands or hugs or whatever it may be, applied to different people. And it really started to grind me down over time. It wasn't an easy thing to do. Um, I like to think I have a very good memory, so trying to keep it all in my head and keep it all going all the time, it was really, really an exhausting thing. It's something I wish I didn't do because it just took so much energy out of me, and I'm kind of glad to be relieved of that burden now that I'm more accepting of being autistic than I ever was.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, I think I identified with a lot of what you wrote in your book. I presume a lot of autistics would, because that is what it's like. It's like just passing as something you're not. And I suppose it's trying to fit in, but it's also like, well, if maybe people were a little bit more accepting of differences and all sorts of difference, then people who are, marginalized wouldn't have this kind of struggle and I suppose this masking that we do, because it's not just autistic people, like it's quite common in minorities, and it's the mental health issues that come from that. And I mean, like, yeah, it's tiring, but it also, I think you talked about, one of your son's birthday parties, about like feeling like everybody was staring at you and but I would have felt like that loads of times. I mean, I don't mask anymore completely, I'm just who I am now after, a lifetime of being someone else. But that's what it feels like because you're performing. So if you're putting on a performance, then you kind of think, of course, that everyone is listening to you. Like, I remember even just like going shopping or doing like everyday things, and you do feel like everyone's paying attention to you. Whereas when you're kind of not masking, you look around, you realize that no one's really paying attention because everyone's just too busy doing their own thing and looking after their own, going about their own business. But it does feel like that at times, absolutely. And I suppose I kind of skipped ahead there now a little bit in what I wanted to talk about, but maybe, do you want to talk about kind of how that affected you mentally, actually? Because I know you mentioned it in your book, but maybe just tell us a little bit without giving it all away. Any spoilers?
It was completely exhausting all the time, and kind of trying to keep up a performance all the time, and the fear of mask slippage is a really, really anxious thing, because comparing like my masking experience, trying to compare it creatively to something that a neurotypical person would understand, is I would compare it to a game of Jenga, and taking a wee block out, all it takes, you're living on, if one mistake, the tower falls, you're compromised. And that's how I had conditioned myself over time, that if I made a mistake or if I misplaced uh, a certain social cue, whatever that is, then my kind of tower would completely collapse around me. And that was something that needed to be avoided at all times, at all costs. And that mask was so profound and so obvious on my face, body, mind, and soul, to the point that my 3-year-old son was able to recognize it, see it for what it was. And that's where the iconic question came from, was, why does daddy always look so sad?
And I must say, when I was reading through the book, that question kind of comes about halfway. Actually, I did stop it is quite, um, it just, I think had just an impact. I can't find words to describe it, but I actually stopped, I think, for a few minutes just after reading
Yeah.
it, because I think I could see it through your son, your son's eyes, how he was interested in you, and what it must have felt like for you to actually hear that. But obviously it was that there came a turning point then in your life. I think that's probably where it came then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. That was the real catalyst that started the journey to where I am now, the acceptance and learning journey that I'm on now. That was really the start of it, because at that stage I was just exhausted, struggling, and so anxious that even a 3-year-old child could see it. That's where I had got to the point where the masking had become so self-destructive that I had no real control over my life or emotions anymore as I knew it.
Yeah. And because I think when we mask so much, it's nearly like the mask it becomes in charge of us, isn't it? It's like, yeah, we're not in control of it anymore. And I know for me, like that, if I said the wrong thing, or felt like I made some sort of social mistake or whatever, again, whatever that is, because people do them all the time, but I would have been like really, really hard on myself, because
Yeah.
again, it's kind of like, if you're creating this persona, it has to be the perfect one.
Yes.
Yes, it can't just be, well, when you threw on that morning, it has to actually be carefully crafted. And yeah, and I think like a lot of us are very hard on ourselves.
Yeah, I would be very, very self-critical. I would be very at times my negative bias can still exist to a certain degree. It's not as bad as it was, because even in the lead up to the book coming out, now I had something like 48 5-star reviews on Amazon and 2 4-star ones.
Oh.
And for 10 points, what ones did I focus on? Exactly.
I know, but you know what? I'm the same. I think it's quite, but also I think, because I actually think about it, I'm like, why is it that, and I think humans anyway, we're kind of drawn to the negative stuff, but when you have kind of received so much negativity in your life, and when you've kind of, whether it's from your environment or from yourself, one more negative thing, it's just like a trigger.
Yeah.
It's not just that one comment that someone else would take no notice of, or and it takes, you have to be in a really good place to be able to say that's just someone else's opinion, or that's their stuff, or you have to, that takes a lot. Well, for me anyway, it does, and sometimes I'm there and other days I'm not, but it just depends on the day. But I think what you have in your book is actually kind of, it's like, because it's like a guide to demasking as such, which is kind of something that a lot of autistic adults, we talk about a lot, and kind of like, we wish there was a kind of step-by-step guide how to do it. And I know for everybody it's different, and for me it kind of happened maybe in a few phases, but I think you were quite lucky maybe with the therapist that you came across as well.
Yeah, I mean, from the point of view of the story, and I mean, I will give a bit of an Awesome Ireland exclusive for unpublished content and the real story. I did have a couple of therapists and counselors that didn't really get me, that I don't think I really got them. They weren't really accepting of me as such, but those parts didn't make it into the book. It would have disrupted the whole flow of the book. There was no real place for them. Those bits and pieces were in the original manuscript, but they're not in it now. And it did take a bit of trial and error, but I did come across two therapists that were much more progressive, that were much more understanding, that were much more aware. And everybody in their journey, whether they're professional or autistic or not, I just so happen to be both. I mean, it's a constant evolution. And funny, I was actually speaking with two of them, since the two of them that are in the book I actually happened to run into in town, and they actually said to me that since they read the book, like I was just a typical client to them. They thought nothing of it, but whenever they read the book, they thought, we'll look into it a bit more. And since then, they've had a lot more positive outcomes for autistic people, because even as professionals, myself included, you are literally limited to the mercy of what the syllabus of what your professional degree limits you to. And
Okay.
I mean, both of them said in their own right, they said, the likes of neurodiversity, and we follow your Facebook page now, and we didn't know what that word was when we worked with you, and we didn't really know it until a good bit afterward. So people are still learning, and that was a really positive thing that came out of it as well, like kind of from the professional standpoint.
That's brilliant, because I think that's something people forget sometimes, is that because they take a professional's viewpoint or opinion as kind of as the truth, but that person has only been taught by somebody else or something they've read, which might have actually had
Yeah,
no autistic input at all. And I think people are only kind of starting to realize that now. And because even when I was reading the book, obviously, because I could find, some of the things the therapists were saying were actually still kind of misconceptions about what autism or being autistic is, kind
yeah,
of things like us not being able to identify our emotions and kind of stuff. That's a byproduct of, people not, again, the way the world responds to us. And even that whole, we can't handle change, that's anxiety. Like, anxious people can't handle change, so anxious autistics are going to be the same. And we all know we have very high levels of anxiety. So again, people didn't kind of see those, the kind of what they were saying. And it's so obvious, I was reading it now, kind of, because I'm more aware of that now. But like at the time, I remember when I was diagnosed, I was reading this list of stuff, and I was like, oh, that's me. Yeah, that's all the stuff I
yeah.
do. But a lot of that was actually the anxiety that was driven by masking and not being accepted in society. Nothing at all to do with being autistic, as such. Like, but yeah, I think I identified a lot with what happened in therapy with you, and I just thought it was quite powerful. Actually, it seemed to happen very quickly, like a few sessions, and you kind of had a lot of breakthroughs.
Um, it did. I mean, for the book itself, obviously there was a lot more to it as I went through it in real life. But for the purposes of telling the story and getting the outcomes, I mean, there's a lot of foundation work that needs done, which was basically discussing all my life events in the previous chapters of the book, and I wasn't going to repeat them again.
Yeah.
So, but both of those processes were longer than what are depicted in the book. I kind of did a match of the day style kind of highlights of it to get it into a book which still had a flow. Although it is my story, I still needed to apply kind of writing tools and storytelling tools to progress it along, because like if it was told the way it was, like I experienced it and then I denied the experience and then having to relive the experience again. That's basically telling the same story of the first 6 chapters twice,
That's
which I couldn't obviously do.
no. Well,
I would have been a it would have been a much longer book, and people would have thought, okay,
I think
so
maybe
now
it
we're
would
at
be published.
chapter
Maybe we wouldn't be having
3.
this conversation.
No,
All this storytelling, it's cool. Yeah, and I just because I know you kind of, that idea that like that you're obsessing, well, that's what you call it, I think, is that you're obsessing and worrying was part of Asperger's or being autistic. Like, would you still think that now, or would you think that it was more, well, what do you think, I suppose I'm asking? Yeah.
well, what it was, I think a lot of my anxieties, worries, and self doubts, and I mean, everybody has them. I'm not a shaman or a messiah that has rid himself of all of his woes. I still have some, like every human being on the planet. But whenever I look back on it, I was I became anxious, worried, and depressed because of my perceptions of what other people had of me, rather than
Yes.
being autistic in and of itself. But the way my head was, because whenever you read up more about it and you see all the negative press around Asperger's syndrome or being autistic or whatever it may be, and whenever I was diagnosed, that was the label that I had. But I mean, now obviously it's down as autism. But that's the label that I had, and then I blamed it, because that's where your head goes. Because people as human beings, and I actually know this from my own social work career, is that a lot of people pathologize, I mean, their problems a lot of the time. It's the natural human instinct, because people would attribute pain, like physical pain, to a physical condition. Like people would say, I am in pain because I have rheumatoid arthritis. And in the same way, I did the same thing, wherein I am in emotional pain because I'm autistic. And that's the link that I had to break.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because I think a lot of autistic people still haven't broken that link, and I think that's a huge part of self-acceptance. I suppose the major story part of the book is you becoming a dad. Yeah. So where do you think you'd be now, say, if you weren't a dad, if Ethan hadn't come along? What way do you think your life would have gone?
Yeah, I have no idea. Funny enough, I kind of avoid going on that on that journey, because Ethan not only is my son, but he is literally my hero. I mean, the only thing he needs now is a cape and a mask, because I don't know what way my journey would have went without him. And he saved my life, and it helped me to kind of become the self-aware and accepted man that I am now. Without him, I don't know what way that would have been. And uh, it's actually funny that I remember my parents saying to me that, if you're going to be a young parent, and I suppose in a way you'll raise each other. So he has raised me in a way that I never imagined could have been possible.
Oh. It's a beautiful story. It's absolutely lovely. So I know you need to go, but I'm just going to ask you, maybe, what, I suppose, after all the years of hiding your true self, what did it feel like putting your story, your true self, into a book for the world to read? That must have been massive.
It was like, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there, because I always wanted to write a book, whether it was fictional or non-fiction, whatever it may be. And without kind of giving away the latter stages of the book just happened. The book had written itself over a period of years. And whenever I put the book out, it was just for Ethan. I would love to take the noble social media friendly approach and say, I wrote a book specifically for autistic people to benefit from, and so on. That just happened to be a byproduct for the book that I wrote for Ethan. And I mean, people can resonate with it, people can identify with it. And one thing that I did want to mention, because I know you're very involved in speech and drama and theater type things, and that
Yes,
really helped
forgot
me.
to,
That
yes.
I mean, that really helped me, and it did my confidence so much good. And I have actually given that advice. That people say, what activities would you recommend? And the first thing I say every single time is speech and drama, because I loved being on the stage. I still love being on the stage. But what's different between now and then is, I think I'm the only speaker or performer, whatever it may be, that goes on the stage and is 100% himself.
Yeah.
which is which is a kind of opposite, because I do like to bring in some theatrics and a bit of laughs. I'm not a PowerPoint speaker. I'm not, oh, and I'm going to read off this slide and this slide. I'm quite animated. I throw the arms around, I click my heels, I point at people, I'm completely and utterly myself. It's like an exhibition of myself. And I'm so proud of it that I just love showing it off to everybody. So it's kind of a strange kind of flip, that I went so long of masking who I was and projecting almost completely a different person, to being able to go on stage and speak to thousands and thousands of people, but as completely and utterly myself. It's a really, I can't really get my head around it a lot of the time, and it's I just feel really at home.
Oh, and I totally get what you're saying, and I totally identify with it all, because there's such a freedom, isn't it? It is
Yeah.
actually like bursting out of this, cage almost, or this pretend person, and just going, this is me, and actually not caring if people don't actually, they don't like me, or they don't, it's actually not my problem, or I don't, that it doesn't actually affect us in the same way that it did. It's massive. And I'm so glad you mentioned speech and drama, because I suppose I did that from so early on, and I think for me, it just got me through so many stages where I actually was totally not confident. I always came across really confident, because I think people see me now and probably saw me 10 years ago and they'd be like, but you were the same. And I'd be like, no, I was like a totally different person. That wasn't me at all. That was like a pretend version of me. And even like that, if I was speaking, because like when I was diagnosed first, I was all pro neurodiversity, but I still like was missing, I suppose, some of the messages in it. It took me a while to get my head around it. But I was very much about organizing autistic events and stuff. But I'm not telling anybody I was autistic. I was pushing out my friends out, But even for the introduction, I'd have to have, it's scripted. Like I'd have to have it written, read it, in case I'd say the wrong thing or someone might see the real me. Whereas now it's just, I stand up and, what we make mistakes when we're talking. We say things, that's what humans do, and we don't have to be perfect. And it's lovely. But I just think for every child, like drama, it's just, and particularly like we do a lot of classes for autistic kids, and we just have loads of neurodiverse kids actually. I think I just attract them. We take the normal ones too. Normal. But it just gives them such a chance to kind of just be themselves and explore and do different things. And it's so important. It's brilliant. So when I was reading that part of the book, I was like, yay, because it is. It's massively important,
It definitely does help. And what I do like to look up on, I mean, even working as a social worker now, I like to look up a lot of like social research, especially where autism is concerned. And there does seem to be a lot of research that suggests that speech and drama is very beneficial for autistic children, and the fact that it's a scripted environment, it's an organized environment, it teaches more communication skills, different tones of voice, especially with music and song and dance, and emotional regulation and expressing oneself where it may be difficult otherwise, whether verbally or written. So it's starting to become much more mainstream that for autistic children, speech, drama, language, dance, like the arts, is a very, very positive thing. And I think as the years go on, I know that the states have developed, and in some states, some form of speech and drama into their basic curriculum, school plays, school shows, festivals, and so on. They do that, and all the way through the early stages of the book, and both the primary schools that I was at, I mean, the speech and drama element really helped me get through.
Yeah, and like most of the schools here in Ireland anyway, most of them would have drama, and they do their Christmas plays and stuff. But again, I think it's not carried on. It might be, kind of in the first 2 years or whatever, and it doesn't progress, and particularly not in secondary schools, where actually at teen years is actually, where kids needed a lot more, I think. And I know for me, even like with classes, we'd have kids coming all the way to, from when they're 5 to 12. And then they're like, well, I'm going to secondary school, I must give up everything else and kind of focus on school. And I'm like, this is the time where really you probably need to be doing these other things. And there's lots of research to show that kids who are in the arts and drama and stuff particularly actually do better across their subjects in school. It actually helps across maths, everything, just that being that creative release as well. And I think so many neurodiverse people we are creative, we are outside the box thinkers, and to give kids that opportunity to explore it is wonderful. I could talk for hours on this, but I'm going to not take over this interview. But so before you go, Jude, tell us, where can we get your book? Where can we find out more about you? And obviously, I know your tours and stuff are kind of put off because of the COVID-19, but tell us kind of where we can find out more, maybe.
Well, I have my website at www.judemorrow.com. Reach out to me. I respond to absolutely everything I get. I have my own Facebook community at Jude Morrow Author, and the book's available from all online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, WH Smith, you name it, it's all there. In the minute, the UK and Ireland, the release date is the 25th of May, but it's available on Kindle everywhere now, and it's been a really exciting journey. Reach out to me, speak to me. I love hearing other people's stories as well as telling my own. So yeah, reach out, ask questions while you read the book. I want to have it as interactive an experience as possible, because there's more details that maybe aren't in the actual book, but that do flesh out some more of the deeper meanings of the events that are written on the pages.
Brilliant. You must be plagued from people, because I know I was texting you loads when I was reading it. So it's really cool to have that interactive experience when you're reading the book. You'll be plagued now with people.
Yeah, and I got back to everyone. I did. I have responded to absolutely everybody, and there's people still asking questions and talking about it, and I'm only too happy to speak back and communicate as much as possible too.
And that offer only stands now while you're at, till when you're selling millions, you can't.
Oh no, it'll still be there. It'll still be there. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
If I am determined, I will answer every single question. I will do it. I will find it hard, but I will do it. The conditions may change over time, as in I will respond within 24 or 48 hours, not always right away. But I do take pride in getting back to everybody that reaches out.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's quite obvious that you're a man of your word, and even the fact that we were going to do this interview today, whether you had internet at home or whether you had to drive up the road to get it. So, Jude, thank you so much for talking to me today. And I'll put the links in the post as well, so everybody can find out where to find or get your book and find out more about you. So, thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Evaleen. It's been lovely, and I will speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.